My unfaithful wife told me she doesn't love me anymore and wants a different life, also took our cat. So I blocked all credit cards, reported the cat stolen to police, and a week later when I said we're getting divorced, she was on her knees at my door apologizing. Sup Reddit. My name is Dylan, and I'm 29 years old. I work as a data analyst, and until about 8 months ago, I'd been married to Victoria for 5 years. This story happened back then, and I'm finally ready to tell the whole thing because honestly, it's been eating at me for months. It all started when I came home one evening to find a note from my wife saying she wanted her freedom. That would have been devastating enough on its own, but she also took my dog Max with her. That was her biggest mistake. She thought stealing my buddy would give her some kind of leverage over me, but instead, it just made me realize exactly how far I was willing to go to make her regret every single decision that led to that moment. Here's what went down, and trust me, it gets wild. The first few years of our marriage were actually pretty solid. We'd moved in together and found this nice rental house that came with an option to buy later on. We were slowly building up our savings and doing all the typical suburban couple things that you're supposed to do. Victoria worked in public relations at some mid-sized company downtown, while I did contract data analysis work that paid really well. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we were comfortable and building towards something bigger. We also had Max, who's this 3-year-old Labrador mix that's about as dumb as a brick, but absolutely devoted to whoever happens to be holding food at any given moment. I'm talking about a dog who once managed to get his head completely stuck in an empty pizza box and just stood there, wagging his tail until I came over and freed him. This is the same dog who follows me to the bathroom every single morning and sits there staring at me like I'm performing some kind of fascinating ritual that he's never seen before. Even though we've been doing this exact routine for 3 years straight. My best friend Marcus witnessed this bathroom situation once during a visit and said, "Dude, your dog has the same expression my ex-girlfriend used to get when I tried to explain why I bought another gaming console." It was this perfect mixture of pure confusion combined with unwavering devotion. From that point on, Max basically became my shadow. Victoria used to joke that she'd married both of us, which seemed cute at the time. Honestly though, the dog turned out to be way more loyal than she ever was. Every single morning, Max would bring me his tennis ball while I was having my coffee, drop it at my feet, and then immediately forget where he'd put it. He'd spend the next 5 minutes looking around with this completely confused expression before starting the whole process over again. Every evening when I got home from work, Max would lose his absolute mind with excitement, acting like I'd been gone for years instead of just 9 hours. Around year 3 of our marriage, things started shifting with Victoria in ways that I didn't fully recognize at the time. She got this new position at work with a much younger crowd, and suddenly our life wasn't exciting enough for her anymore. She'd come home with all these stories about her coworkers' weekend trips to Vegas, their expensive dinners at trendy restaurants, and their spontaneous adventures around the city. Meanwhile, we were doing what I thought was normal married people stuff. Netflix binges on Friday nights, grocery shopping together on weekends, saving money for the down payment on our house, and playing fetch with Max in the backyard during those beautiful summer evenings. "Look at this," she'd say, showing me some coworkers' Instagram photos from Cabo or Miami. "When's the last time we went somewhere exotic like this?" "When's the last time they made a student loan payment?" I'd respond, scratching Max behind the ears while he drooled contentedly on my laptop keyboard. The real problem started about 2 years ago when Victoria's cousin Cassandra moved to our city. Cassandra is one of those women who treats marriage like it's some kind of patriarchal conspiracy specifically designed to trap independent women and crush their dreams. She's 31, has never been married herself, and cycles through relationships every few months like she's test driving cars. She has this whole live your truth philosophy that sounds really deep and meaningful until you realize she's basically just commitment phobic and trying to justify it with pseudo-intellectual nonsense. The first time I met Cassandra was at Victoria's birthday dinner at this upscale restaurant downtown. She spent the entire night making these passive-aggressive comments about settling down and how marriage was just a legal contract that kills romance and spontaneity. When Victoria mentioned that we were seriously thinking about buying our rental house, Cassandra actually said, "Wow, a mortgage together. That's so permanent." With this tone like we just announced we were joining some kind of religious cult. Marcus was there that night, and he texted me later saying, "Your wife's cousin looks like she orders wine at Olive Garden and then complains it doesn't pair well with her breadstick appetizer," which was honestly the perfect description of her entire personality. Max, being the social butterfly that he is, immediately took a liking to Cassandra and kept trying to put his massive head in her lap during dinner. She kept pushing him away and claiming she was allergic to pet dander, which should have been my first clue that she was completely full of shit about everything else too. I pulled Victoria aside later that night and told her straight up that Cassandra was poison. She's projecting her own relationship issues onto your life, I said. Don't let her mess with your head about what we have. Victoria got defensive immediately. She's not messing with my head, Dylan. She's just pointing out that maybe we've gotten too comfortable. Maybe we've stopped growing as people. Growing into what? I asked. Debt from expensive vacations we can't afford? Relationship drama like she has every 3 months? See, this is exactly what she means, Victoria shot back. You're so focused on being practical and responsible that you've forgotten how to actually live. When's the last time we did something spontaneous? When's the last time we took a risk? That fight lasted 4 solid days, and it should have been a massive red flag. But I figured every marriage goes through rough patches, and I thought we'd work through it like we always had. When I told Marcus about the fight, he said, "Let me get this straight. Your wife's mad at you for being financially responsible and planning for the future. What's next? Is she going to be pissed that you remembered to feed the dog? Dylan's so boring. He keeps our pet alive instead of letting him figure out his own authentic hunger journey." Over the next year, Cassandra became Victoria's constant companion and unofficial life coach. Girls' nights became weekly events, and Victoria would come home tipsy and philosophical about life paths and authentic living. She started criticizing everything about our routine with increasing frequency and intensity. Our Friday movie nights were predictable and boring. Our weekend hiking was just another example of how we were stuck in a rut. Even walking Max became a chore, she complained about, instead of the relaxing evening routine it used to be. The criticism got more frequent and more pointed as time went on. I was apparently risk-averse and afraid of change. Our relationship was stagnant and preventing both of us from reaching our full potential. I was holding her back from experiencing real life and discovering who she truly was. Even Max caught some heat in this new worldview. Apparently having a dog was just another sign of our overly conventional lifestyle that was keeping her trapped in suburban domesticity. March 18th. I remember the exact date because it was the day after St. Patrick's Day, which we'd spent having a quiet dinner at home and watching a movie. You know, normal, comfortable, apparently soul-crushing stuff according to Victoria's new perspective on life. Max had spent the evening stealing popcorn kernels off the floor and trying to fit his entire oversized head into the bowl while we laughed at his ridiculous antics. I came home from a client meeting around 7 p.m. to find the house completely empty and eerily quiet. Victoria's car was gone, which wasn't unusual since she often worked late or went out with Cassandra. But something felt fundamentally wrong about the silence. It was different somehow. Heavier, more permanent, and deeply unsettling in a way I couldn't immediately identify. It took me a few seconds to realize what was actually missing. There was no clicking of dog nails on the hardwood floors. No excited barking at the sound of my car pulling into the driveway. No furry torpedo launching himself at my legs the moment I walked through the front door. Max wasn't there. I walked into the kitchen and immediately spotted it. A folded piece of paper sitting on our granite countertop, held down by Victoria's house key like some kind of symbolic anchor. I opened the note and read what were honestly the most disrespectful 4 sentences of my entire marriage. "I'm done pretending this life makes me happy. I deserve better than boring stability and Netflix marathons. I'm taking time to figure out who I really am without you holding me back. Don't bother looking for me. I'll contact you when I'm ready. Also, I took Max. He deserves better too." I stood there rereading those words over and over, feeling something cold and hard settle in my chest. The coffee maker was still warm. She'd made her usual morning pot before orchestrating this dramatic exit. Half her closet was empty, but she'd left her muddy running shoes right in the middle of our brand new area rug like a final screw you to the life we'd built together. My wife had apparently decided that I was the villain in her personal empowerment story, and she'd kidnapped my dog to prove some kind of point. I called Marcus immediately, my hand still shaking as I held that devastating note. He listened to me read the entire thing word for word and said, "Bro, this reads like a Yelp review for marriage written by someone who thinks 2 stars is generous. Service was adequate but lacked excitement. Would not recommend to friends seeking authentic dining experience." She'd taken her passport, all her jewelry, her laptop, and about $900 in cash from our emergency fund that we kept in the kitchen drawer. Money I'd saved for actual emergencies, not identity crises. But taking Max, That was pure spite. She'd been complaining about him for months, calling him needy and just another responsibility, tying her down to our boring domestic life. Now suddenly, he was important enough to steal. I called her phone and it went straight to voicemail. But even her message was different now. Hi, you've reached Victoria. I'm on a journey of self-discovery right now, so if this is important, try again in a few weeks. That's when I sat down at my computer and started researching divorce attorneys and pet recovery laws. If Victoria wanted to find herself, she could do it as a single woman, without my dog. I wasn't going to be her backup plan while she figured out if the grass was greener somewhere else, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let her steal my best friend in the process. My first call was to Walter, the highest-rated divorce attorney in our city. His consultation fee was steep, but his reviews were absolutely brutal. Exactly what I needed. My wife abandoned our marriage and stole our dog, I told him during the initial consultation. Was the dog purchased during the marriage? Adopted? Are both your names on the paperwork? Walter asked, with the efficiency of someone who'd heard this story before. Both our names are on the adoption paperwork, but I paid all the fees. I'm the one listed as primary on all the vet records, and I've been handling all his care since day one. Walter smiled, and it definitely wasn't a nice smile. Pet theft during marital abandonment. That's going to be expensive for her. My second call was to my bank. Hi, I need to report suspicious activity on my accounts. My debit card may have been compromised. Not technically a lie, since my marriage had definitely been compromised. They froze our joint checking and savings accounts immediately, pending an in-person visit to verify my identity. Good thing I'd maintained my own separate account that Victoria didn't know about. A small emergency fund I'd been building since we got married. Call it paranoia, but it was about to become my lifeline. My third move was calling our vet and reporting Max as stolen. Dr. Patterson had been seeing Max since we first adopted him and knew exactly who that dog belonged to. I need documentation that I'm his primary caretaker for legal purposes, I explained. Absolutely, she said without hesitation. That dog is bonded to you, not her. I'll prepare a statement about his care history and behavioral attachment patterns. My fourth move was packing for the solo hiking trip I'd been planning for months. Victoria had always refused to come, saying it sounded mind-numbingly boring and pointless. Max usually came with me on shorter day hikes, and I felt his absence like a missing limb. I took one last look around our house, my house now, legally speaking, since she'd abandoned it, and headed for the mountains. If Victoria wanted space, I'd give her all the space in the world. Just not the kind she was expecting, and definitely not with my dog. 3 weeks in the Appalachian Mountains was exactly what I needed, even though every single trail reminded me of Max. There was no cell service for the first few days, just me and some serious elevation gain. I'm talking about 14-hour hiking days with a full pack, sleeping in my tent, eating trail mix and instant ramen like I was training for some kind of survival show. It felt incredible to push my body and not think about anything except putting one foot in front of the other. No Victoria criticizing our boring routine. No Cassandra poisoning my wife's brain with her commitment phobia. Although I kept looking around for a golden furry idiot to come bounding through the trees with a stick in his mouth, Max had always loved hiking. He'd run ahead on the trail, double back to check on me, then run ahead again like he was some kind of furry scout. Then he'd inevitably find the muddiest possible spot within a 50-yard radius to roll around in until he looked like a swamp monster. The trails felt genuinely empty without him. On day 5, I hiked down to a spot with cell coverage to check my phone, and holy hell. 42 text messages, 29 missed calls, and enough voicemails to fill a small podcast. It started with her friends doing damage control. Hey, Victoria's really worried about you. She said you guys had a big fight. Can you just call her back so she knows you're okay? Then came Victoria's messages, and watching her mental state deteriorate in real time was something else. It started off annoyed. Seriously, Dylan, you're going to ignore me now? This is so typical. You always shut down when things get emotional. Then confused. Why isn't my card working? Did you freeze our accounts? The hotel is saying my payment was declined. What did you do? Then desperate. Max has been whining all day and he won't eat. I think he's sick. You need to call me back right now. That one hit me right in the gut. Of course, Max was miserable. He was stuck with someone who'd spent months complaining about him in some unfamiliar place, wondering where his real person had gone. The poor dog probably thought he was being punished for something he didn't understand. I called Marcus from the mountain and read him some of the messages. He said, "Let me translate these for you. I made a series of terrible decisions and now I'm discovering that actions have consequences. Please fix this for me so I can continue making terrible decisions. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure book, but all the choices lead to you being screwed. Then came the full panic messages. Dylan, call me right now. This isn't funny anymore. I'm stuck at some motel and I can't pay for another night. You can't just cut me off like this. The voicemails were even better. The first one was pure indignation. I can't believe you're being this petty. All I wanted was some time to think and you're acting like I committed a crime. Call me back. By voicemail number 9, she was crying, Dylan, please. I know you're hurt, but this is crazy. We can work through this. I just needed some space to figure things out. You're supposed to fight for us. The one about Max absolutely broke my heart. He keeps looking out the window like he's waiting for you. He won't play with any of his toys. I don't know what to do with him. Fight for us? Like I was supposed to compete for my own wife's attention while she found herself with whoever was funding her little eat, pray, love fantasy? And now she was using my dog's distress as emotional leverage? The last message was pure delusion. I get that you're angry, but you're taking this way too far. When I'm ready to come home, we're going to have serious problems if you don't fix this account situation. I sent all the messages about Max straight to Walter for evidence of her admitting she'd taken him without permission. Marcus, I said during my check-in call, she's using my dog as a hostage. Of course she is, he replied. It's the oldest play in the divorce handbook. Can't manipulate the husband directly? Grab something he loves and watch him fold. I spent the rest of my vacation hiking and planning my next moves. When you've been married for 5 years, you accumulate a lot of shared everything. Accounts, subscriptions, emergency contacts, insurance policies. The drive home felt like returning from a different planet. My head was clearer than it had been in months. Whatever Victoria had planned for her grand return, I was ready. And I was getting my dog back. When I called Marcus to let him know I was heading home, he said, Welcome back to civilization, Mountain Man. Time to show your wife that stealing someone's dog is like poking a bear. Except the bear has a lawyer and access to joint bank accounts. Monday morning, I cleaned up at a truck stop, put on my best suit, and drove to Walter's office. It was this professional building, all glass and steel, like something out of a legal thriller. I was feeling pretty confident until I pulled into the parking lot and saw familiar faces. Victoria was sitting on a low brick wall by the landscaping, but she wasn't alone. Cassandra was there too, pacing around like a caged animal and gesturing wildly while Victoria sat with her head in her hands. Cassandra spotted my car first and started marching over. I got out, straightened my tie, and started walking toward the office entrance without acknowledging them. Dylan! Cassandra's voice was sharp and accusatory. What the hell do you think you're doing? I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her. 3 weeks of whatever authentic living she'd been coaching my wife through had aged both of them about 6 years. I'm handling my business, Cassandra. You should try it sometime. Your business? She laughed, but it sounded forced and hysterical. Victoria is your wife. This is her home, her life, her money. You can't just freeze her out because she needed some space. Well, I did. He's not just your dog, Victoria said, stepping around Cassandra like she was using her as a human shield. We adopted him together. His name is on both our documents. Primary caretaker rights say otherwise. I paid his adoption fees, his vet bills, his food, his training. You've been complaining about him being a burden for months. Cassandra jumped in immediately. Oh, that's rich. So because Victoria decided to prioritize her own happiness for once, she loses her rights to everything? This is exactly the kind of controlling behavior I warned her about. You warned her about a lot of things, didn't you, Cassandra? Like how marriage was a prison, how I was holding her back, how she deserved better than stability and commitment. Did you also tell her that dog theft is a felony? Dog theft? Cassandra scoffed. It's her dog, too. Not according to the vet records, the training certificates, or the behavioral assessment I had done. Max's primary bond is with me, as documented by a licensed veterinary behaviorist. Victoria was crying now. Dylan, please. My card was declined at 4 different places yesterday. It was humiliating. People were staring. And our savings account. The bank said you reported some kind of fraud. There was fraud, Victoria. You defrauded me of an honest marriage and stole my dog. This wasn't supposed to happen like this, Victoria continued, her voice breaking. I just needed time to think, to figure out what I wanted. You were supposed to wait for me. And Max, he's been so sad. He won't eat properly. He keeps looking for you. You stole my dog, Victoria. I didn't steal him. He's mine too. Then why didn't you bring him? Dogs don't lie. He knows who his real person is. I started walking toward the glass doors. Bring him to me, or I'll add pet theft and animal cruelty to the divorce filing. You can't divorce me! Victoria's voice cracked with panic. We have to go to counseling. We have to work on this. You don't just blow up 5 years because I made one mistake. I turned back one last time. You didn't make a mistake, Victoria. You made a choice. Multiple choices over several months while lying to my face about it. Bring me my dog, or you'll regret it. The last thing I heard before the doors closed was Cassandra screaming something about toxic masculinity and financial abuse. Victoria was sobbing my name like a question, with this dawning horror in her voice as she realized her backup plan wasn't going to work. Walter's office was exactly what you'd want in a divorce attorney's space. Expensive furniture, impressive law books lining the walls, framed degrees, the whole intimidating setup. The guy was mid-50s, wearing a sharp suit, and had the demeanor of someone who bills $600 an hour and earns every single penny of it. So, he said, reviewing my preliminary notes with obvious satisfaction, your wife abandoned the marital home with written documentation of her intent. She attempted to access joint funds for undisclosed purposes while conducting an extramarital affair. She stole your dog, and now she's surprised that you're taking her at her word about wanting freedom. Walter smiled again, and it definitely wasn't a nice smile. Pet theft during marital abandonment is a separate cause of action. We can seek damages for emotional distress, veterinary costs for his trauma, and immediate return of the animal. This is going to be easier than I thought. How fast can we get him back? I asked. Emergency motion for return of unlawfully seized property. If she took him without consent while abandoning the marital home, we can have a sheriff's deputy collect him within 48 hours. For the first time since finding that note, I actually smiled. That night, the house felt completely different. Bigger somehow, like it was finally the right size for the person actually living in it. But also emptier in the worst possible way. No clicking of dog nails on the hardwood floors. No tennis ball appearing at my feet every 20 minutes like clockwork. No furry shadow following me from room to room, providing constant companionship without asking for anything except the occasional ear scratch and belly rub. I kept catching myself looking for Max, expecting to see him sprawled in his favorite spot by the window or waiting patiently by his food bowl. Going to bed without the familiar weight of 80 pounds of Labrador claiming his half of the mattress was honestly devastating. I ended up in our home office, staring at the desktop computer we used for shared household stuff. I'd never had reason to be suspicious before, but Victoria's note had been so cold and calculated that I wondered what else I'd missed. It didn't take long to find out. She'd never bothered clearing her browser history, probably because she never expected me to look. There it was, a 7-month timeline of complete betrayal laid out in perfect chronological order. Hotel bookings for 2 people. Restaurant reservations at expensive places we'd never been to together. Airbnb confirmations for romantic weekend getaways, and a WhatsApp chat with someone named Brandon that went back to last August. Brandon. I recognized the name from Victoria's work stories. He was a senior manager in her public relations department, the guy who always seemed to be organizing team-building events that required overnight stays. The one she'd mentioned was going through a difficult divorce and needed emotional support from his colleagues. I scrolled through their conversation history, watching my marriage disintegrate in real time through flirty messages and inside jokes. The early conversations were work-focused and innocent enough. Then they gradually became more personal and intimate. By October, they were making plans for lunch dates that lasted 3 hours. By November, they were exchanging photos that definitely weren't work-related. By December, they were discussing their situation and how complicated everything was. The final message thread from the morning she left was absolutely brutal. Brandon, ready for your new life? Victoria, note is on the counter. Dylan will probably be dramatic about it, but he'll get over it. He always does. Brandon, what about the dog? Victoria, I'm bringing him. Dylan's too attached. He needs to learn to let go of things that aren't really his. I kept scrolling and found something even better. A group chat between Victoria, Cassandra, and 2 other women I didn't recognize. The chat was called Freedom Fighters, and it was basically a support group for women planning to leave their relationships. Cassandra was clearly the ringleader, constantly posting articles about authentic living and breaking free from societal expectations. Victoria had been active in the chat for months, sharing intimate details about our arguments, our finances, and even photos of our house with captions like suburban prison and same view every day. One message from Cassandra made my blood absolutely boil. Remember, you don't owe him an explanation. You don't owe him closure. Take whatever will hurt him most. His security, his routine, his precious dog. If he can't support your growth, he was never worthy of you anyway. Another message from Victoria was equally infuriating. Dylan's so focused on our stability that he can't see how miserable I am. Brandon makes me feel alive again for the first time in years. I'm excited about the future, and honestly, taking Max will destroy him. He loves that dog more than he loves me. She was absolutely right about one thing. I did love that dog more than I loved her. Turns out Max had better loyalty instincts than my wife of 5 years. I took screenshots of everything. Every hotel confirmation, every romantic message, every group chat manipulation, every single mention of using Max as a weapon against me. I saved them all to a thumb drive labeled evidence and emailed copies to Walter immediately. Walter called me the next morning, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. Dylan, this is incredible. She didn't just cheat. She documented the entire premeditated plan to abandon the marriage and steal your dog. And this group chat shows clear intent to use the animal as emotional leverage against you. What does that mean for getting Max back? Emergency motion filed this morning. We have documented proof she took him specifically to cause you emotional distress while abandoning the marital home. The sheriff's department will execute a return order within 24 hours. And what about Cassandra? Oh, Cassandra's going to love this. Conspiracy to commit marital fraud and advising someone to steal a pet for emotional manipulation. She could be liable for damages on multiple fronts. 26 hours later, my doorbell rang. A sheriff's deputy stood there with a clipboard and the most beautiful sight I'd seen in 4 weeks. My buddy pulling against his leash toward my front door like his life depended on it. Mr. Dillon, I have an order for return of unlawfully seized property. Max saw me and completely lost his mind. He started howling and jumping and pulling so hard that the deputy had to brace himself against the doorframe. The moment he unclipped that leash, 80 pounds of golden fur launched at me like a missile. I went down on my knees and Max knocked me flat on my back, covering my face in desperate kisses while making these little whimpering sounds like he was trying to tell me everything that had happened to him. His tail was going so hard it was hitting the deputy in the legs. Looks like he knows who he belongs to, the deputy said, scratching behind Max's ears while my dog tried to climb into my lap. Your wife tried to argue he was community property, but honestly, I've never seen a dog react like this to anyone but his real person. I buried my face in Max's fur and felt something I hadn't realized was broken start to heal. That night, Max didn't leave my side for 5 minutes. He followed me to the kitchen, to the bathroom, and even tried to climb into the shower with me. When we finally went to bed, he sprawled across my chest like he was making absolutely sure I couldn't disappear again. For the first time since finding that note, I slept through the entire night. Game on, Victoria. You just made this personal. The next few weeks were like watching a perfectly orchestrated demolition in slow motion. I didn't have to push any buttons or actively sabotage anything. I just had to step back and let Victoria's own choices collapse her carefully planned new life around her. Plus, I had my dog back, which made everything else feel completely manageable. Marcus came over that first weekend and brought Max a new rope toy. Figured the little dude deserved a welcome home present, he said, watching Max immediately destroy the packaging with enthusiastic determination. Plus, your ex-wife probably traumatized him with her terrible taste in everything. Meanwhile, Victoria's carefully constructed new life was imploding in the most spectacular way possible. The first domino to fall was money. Without access to our joint accounts, she was entirely dependent on Brandon's generosity for everything: hotel rooms, meals, gas, basic necessities. The problem was that Brandon was still technically married and going through his own messy divorce proceedings. His wife had discovered their affair through credit card statements showing all those romantic dinners that weren't as discreet as they'd thought they were. Now, she was demanding forensic accounting of every single penny he'd spent during their marriage. Cassandra actually called me directly, which was incredibly bold, considering she'd spent the better part of a year undermining my marriage and advising Victoria to steal my dog. Dylan, you need to stop this childish behavior and release Victoria's money. She has a right to those funds. Actually, she doesn't, I replied calmly. All marital assets are frozen pending divorce proceedings. Her lawyer can file a motion if she thinks she has a case. She doesn't have a lawyer because she can't afford one. You're financially abusing her. She's welcome to contact legal aid services, or maybe Brandon can cover her legal fees since he's funding her journey of self-discovery. The silence on the other end of the line was absolutely telling. Apparently, Brandon's financial support wasn't as robust as they'd advertised to the Freedom Fighters group chat. You're punishing her for having the courage to want more out of life, Cassandra continued, her voice getting more shrill. I'm respecting her choice to leave our boring marriage. She's free now, just like she wanted. Cassandra exploded. You're a vindictive asshole, Dylan. Victoria made one mistake. She tried to find happiness and you're destroying her life over it. I have 7 months of WhatsApp messages that say otherwise. Plus, your little Freedom Fighters group chat where you all planned this whole thing, including using my dog as emotional leverage. The line went dead. Apparently, Cassandra didn't know I'd found their conspiracy group. The second domino was social consequences. Victoria and Brandon's relationship was now public knowledge at her workplace, and it wasn't playing well with management. 2 married employees having an affair and bringing their personal drama to the office was creating HR nightmares and serious liability issues. It was turning into a corporate disaster. My friend Kelly, who worked in a related industry, gave me updates while I threw tennis balls for Max in the backyard. It's all anyone's talking about in PR circles, she said. Victoria's basically become a pariah in the public relations community. Word gets around fast when someone torches their marriage for a coworker. Brandon's situation was even worse. His wife wasn't going quietly into that good night. She'd hired a private investigator who had documented their entire affair in excruciating detail, including work trips they'd taken together using company funds. Brandon was now facing potential termination and a fraud investigation. The third domino was housing and pet care reality. The sketchy motel that Cassandra had mentioned in her panicked phone calls was apparently their only option, and it definitely wasn't pet-friendly. Victoria had been keeping Max in her car during the day while she tried to figure out their living situation and sneaking him into the motel room at night. This explained his significant weight loss and obvious anxiety when the deputy returned him to me. She had absolutely no idea how to properly care for him. Dr. Patterson told me during Max's follow-up veterinary visit, she was feeding him the wrong food on the wrong schedule, and dogs are creatures of habit. Being in a strange place with someone who doesn't understand his basic needs, that's psychological torture for an animal. Max was doing so much better now. He was back to his normal routine of morning ball time, afternoon naps in his favorite spot by the window, and evening walks around our neighborhood where he could sniff all his familiar smells and mark his territory. His tail was wagging constantly again, his appetite had returned to normal, and he'd stopped that anxious pacing he'd been doing when he first came home. The fourth domino was Victoria's complete mental breakdown. The voicemails started coming daily, sometimes multiple times a day. I saved them all, but now they had a completely different tone than before. Dylan, I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but taking Max away was cruel. Then, I don't understand why you're doing this to me. All I wanted was to figure out who I really am. Isn't that what people are supposed to do? Isn't that healthy? And Max belongs with both of us. Then, the Dylan I married wouldn't leave me stranded like this, and he wouldn't use our dog to hurt me. And finally, you know what? Fine. If this is how you want to play it, I'll get a lawyer. I'll fight for what's mine. You can't just erase 5 years because you're having an ego problem. I forwarded all the voicemails to Walter with a note. Exhibit C, mental state deterioration and admission of dog theft. The breaking point came when she showed up at my workplace. I was leaving the office around 6:30 p.m. when I saw her sitting in her car in the parking lot. She looked absolutely terrible, like she'd been living in that car for days. She got out when she saw me, moving like someone who hadn't slept properly in a week. Dylan, please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. You should be talking to your lawyer, Victoria. I can't afford a lawyer. Brandon can't help me right now because his wife is being vindictive. Cassandra says I should fight this, but I don't know how. I don't know what I'm doing. She started crying right there in the parking lot. Ugly, desperate sobs that made people stop and stare. I just wanted to be happy. I just wanted to feel alive again. Was that so wrong? And now I've lost everything. Even Max hates me. He doesn't hate you. He just knows who takes care of him. His marriage was over, she continued, her voice breaking. Brandon told me they were just staying together for financial reasons. I thought we were both just trapped in situations that weren't working. What did you think was going to happen, Victoria? That I'd just wait around while you figured out if you wanted to be married to me or someone else? I thought you'd fight for us. The words came out like a wail. I thought you'd realize what you were losing and fight to get me back. I thought you cared enough to try. And there it was. The final piece of her entitled delusion. She'd wanted me to compete for her attention. to prove my love by pursuing her while she played house with Brandon. In her mind, I was supposed to be the safety net she could fall back on if her affair didn't work out the way she'd planned. I did fight for us, Victoria. I fought for us every day for 5 years. You just confused fighting with begging. I got in my car and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot still crying. In my rearview mirror, I watched her collapse against her car like her strings had been cut. I texted Marcus. Victoria showed up at my office, full breakdown in the parking lot. His response? Your ex-wife just had a public meltdown because reality finally caught up with her fantasy. This is like watching someone discover that unicorns aren't real, but they already quit their job to become a unicorn trainer. 8 months after finding that note, it was finally over. The divorce was finalized on a Thursday morning in a sterile conference room that smelled like industrial carpet and broken dreams. There were no dramatic courtroom scenes or passionate speeches, just 2 lawyers shuffling papers while their clients signed away 5 years of marriage with ballpoint pens. Max came with me to the final meeting because honestly, I wasn't leaving him anywhere after what we'd been through. He spent the entire proceeding lying at my feet, occasionally getting up to sniff around the room and investigate the various participants before returning to his spot next to my chair like a furry legal advisor. Walter had absolutely demolished them. He presented our case with surgical precision that was honestly beautiful to watch. Victoria's premeditated adultery was documented in her own messages. Her conspiracy with Cassandra to plan the abandonment was laid out in painful detail. Brandon's involvement was thoroughly documented. The Freedom Fighters group chat showed clear intent to defraud marital assets and use emotional manipulation. And the calculated theft of my dog as leverage was proven beyond any reasonable doubt. Victoria's legal aid attorney was competent enough, but she was completely outgunned from the start. She tried to argue that Victoria was entitled to half of everything regardless of fault, but our state allows fault-based asset division under specific circumstances. Walter proved that Victoria's actions constituted fraud, abandonment, conspiracy to dissipate marital assets, and pet theft. It wasn't even close. The final settlement was absolutely devastating for Victoria. She walked away with her personal belongings, which I'd professionally packed and stored in a climate-controlled facility. She got the car that her parents had bought her as a college graduation gift. And she received about 18% of our joint savings, enough to get started somewhere else, but nowhere near enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd expected or felt entitled to. Everything else was mine. The house, all the good furniture, the investment accounts I'd been building, and full legal custody of Max with absolutely no visitation rights for Victoria. The judge had been particularly unimpressed with the pet theft aspect of the case, calling it unconscionably cruel in his final remarks. The real victory was the house, since I'd renewed the lease in my name alone after. Victoria's documented abandonment, the option to buy, was exclusively mine. The down payment I'd been secretly building was completely untouched by the divorce proceedings. The house is ours now, not mine and Victoria's, but mine and Max's, earned through her betrayal and secured through my careful preparation. I gutted the place and rebuilt it as our space. I converted Victoria's precious reading chair corner into a proper home office where Max could lie next to my desk while I worked on client projects. I installed a legitimate man cave in the basement, complete with a pool table, beer fridge, and a comfortable dog bed in the corner for when Max wanted to supervise my games with Marcus. The biggest change was the backyard. I tore out Victoria's carefully maintained flower beds and installed a proper dog run with professional agility equipment. Max isn't exactly the brightest bulb in the box, but he absolutely loves jumping through hoops and running around cones, even if he occasionally forgets which direction he's supposed to be going. The aftermath for Victoria and Brandon was exactly what karma had ordered. They lasted about 5 months after the divorce was finalized. Turns out their grand romance was significantly less romantic when it wasn't forbidden anymore, and when they were both completely broke. Brandon's divorce cost him literally everything. His wife's forensic accountant discovered he'd spent over $18,000 in marital funds on the affair: hotels, restaurants, gifts, weekend trips. He ended up losing his house, half his retirement savings, and his job when the company fired him for misusing corporate travel funds and creating a hostile work environment. Victoria tried to stick it out with him, but a broke, bitter, unemployed Brandon wasn't nearly as attractive as the successful senior manager who'd swept her off her feet with expensive dinners and weekend getaways. When the money ran out, so did the passion. Funny how that works. Victoria got her freedom. She got her chance to find herself and discover who she really was when the safety net was gone and the consequences were real. Turns out she was someone who'd rather have boring stability than authentic poverty. Someone who'd rather have a predictable husband than an unreliable boyfriend living in a studio apartment. But by then, it was far too late to matter. Max and I had moved on completely. We'd built something better and learned to appreciate the sound of a house that's truly ours. Marcus summed it up perfectly the other day. Your ex-wife thought she was trading up from a Honda Civic to a Lamborghini, but it turned out to be a rental car with no insurance and a gas tank full of regret. Meanwhile, you kept the Honda, paid it off, and now it runs better than ever. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well. Game over. We won, so here I am now. Dylan, 29 years old, with my house, my dog, and my life back. Victoria's out there somewhere, probably still trying to find herself and figure out what authentic living actually means when you can't afford it. Max is here with me, playing with his rope toy and living our absolute best life together. No regrets whatsoever. The lesson here? Never let anyone steal your dog, and always keep a separate bank account that your spouse doesn't know about. Trust me on this one. It might save your life someday.